Hello and welcome to my first video after the nerfs, at least normal deck video. We did do the pack opening and the story mode of course, but I wanted to cover something that I thought would be interesting, and Holy Lion was where I wanted to go. I basically adapted an old deck, so don't expect this to be super decent or extremely good right now. It's definitely going to require some refinement, and even right now I've seen a couple of better decks floating around that I'll probably be covering in the next week or so, just as things kind of settle down. As the first week, always the roughest whenever something drops. You'll hear that every time a new expansion or mini expansion drops. That first week is pretty experimental and doesn't give a great representation of the meta until late in that week at least. So really just kicking off, we basically just spam as many amulets as we can for the Holy Lion and take advantage of Holy Lion of Salvation. Really the only new card that you can throw in Lion that would be decent, of course, so why not? I also am adding the Godsworn as it works well with Temple of Holy Lion and stops a lot of the shenanigans that Rune can pull off, and Dealer Fey is just kind of an extra thing. It's a decent ward, it's a good body, and it fills out a 6-drop spot while giving us continuous healing, especially if we decide to block out with Godsworn while we're holding off for our Lions, although most of the time you want to be fairly aggressive. Otherwise this deck could be reasonably cheap. You could easily cut these two legendaries and just add in a few other cards. Legendary Fighter is probably the only other legendary I like to run, as it is really decent and synergizes extremely well with these Lion cards, especially Holy Lion of Salvation. It works wonders once you throw that Evo, and you end up getting a crystal out of that as well for free, so you can effectively drop that and get a double boost out of this very quickly. Of course, it's very rare to pull off Legendary Fighter. It's more of a pseudo ward at this point, which isn't a bad thing, but either way, we're going to get right into it and check it. So kicking us off, we have Haven versus Haven, and no surprise here, as that's going to be a pretty common matchup to begin with, as Lion is just that popular at the moment. So many variations though, so don't expect it to be too crazy after all. As I mentioned, there's at least 2 to 3 other variants I've seen that run along the same lines with the same base engine, but are teching in very different cards, which can really shake up the decks. Of course, I just tried to make the variation I'm using to suit what I wanted and what playstyle, which is something Lion is really good for. It's reasonably cheap, which means you've got a lot of room to kind of mess around with the deck. You don't have to run things like Beacon of Salvation. You could quite easily run other clears, like banishment clears, but there are just some really good options here. Of course, Unicorn Knight, no, that's pretty decent for our opponent, but not the best overall. Prism Swing is going to be pretty much perfect for us at this point. Now, we definitely know they are Holy Lion crystals, so that's going to be great. Holy Lion just is a lot of fun, honestly. And another Prism Swing. I would have used it, but then we would have been overstacked in our board, and we didn't want to be in that situation. Like, we didn't want to have a full hand, we want to be able to draw into some decent cards. So really at this point it's just a matter of countering our opponent's board and until we can develop enough for ourselves. And Iron Fist is actually a decent card in this matchup because it can remove those 4-drops quite easily, or the 4/4 Lions, sorry. Holy Shield Lion, of course, is not too bad to deal with, but now that they have the amulet up, we are in some trouble. At least Prism Swing will take this out and give us a chance to go for a crystal. So we're slowly boosting our crystals up. It's just going to take time. The one advantage Holy Lion has now is that there are a lot of crystal generation, and that is an amazing thing for this deck, as it literally is the core of the deck. Anytime Holy Lions get more support, it's just going to become a stronger and stronger deck. Especially with a card like this, a 4/7 award on Evo with a 2/2 follow-up from the 0 cost. I didn't end up using it this turn only because I wanted to hold off turn. But it's definitely a nuts card when you do play it in full. I mainly wanted to avoid the potential ramifications from playing the 0-drop amulet right now. And even better, we did draw the Holy Lion Temple, so going to be nuts. Especially once we start playing these out. So that's why I really wanted to hold on to that 0 cost sometimes. If I don't have an immediate reason to play it, holding on to it for one turn is usually the reasonable option. Because we have so many generators as well, we're not too worried about just sacrificing Lion amulets too much. Of course, the situation we're in now isn't perfect by any means. But it's also not the worst. I've definitely been in a worse situation than this, so it's definitely not a bad one to be stuck in. So I decided to play out both our crystals, mainly because that gave us the 4/4 storm. Gives us a little bit of time at least. Seraphic Blade, perfect target. Much prefer to hit that than my amulet. And it looks like they couldn't really do anything else, which is great for us. They obviously suspected we'd probably have a decent lion play and gave up, but fortunately for us we didn't, so worked out either way. And now to immediately follow up that kind of Holy Lion mirror match, if you want to call it that, we do have Rune, which has personally been my worst matchup with this deck so far. That's not indicative of the deck. I think it's just as I get used to it, and probably as we develop better Holy Lion decks, the matchup will hopefully improve. But because Holy Lion is on the slower end of the spectrum, I would say usually you can win somewhere around turn 7 to 9, which isn't a great spot considering Rune can do some pretty nuts things in those turns. Especially now that they've got basically a Burn Earth Rune deck around, which I would love to play. Unfortunately, don't have any of the newly Rune Legendary. I wish I did, otherwise I would 100% be playing that. But we do have some interesting Rune ideas that are going to be coming up. This is definitely a pretty nutso card play going for just pure board here. I did debate on whether wiping these out was worth it, but I decided to favour the Holy Lion Crystals instead. Which I still feel was the worthwhile situation to kind of play off here. Especially since I can go Holy Lion of Salvation and still have a 0-drop Holy Lion Crystal, which is going to be really good. But of course you don't need to draw a Holy Lion of Salvation to win. These matches were just some of the ones I did win that I wanted to show off to you guys, because I thought they were representative of what the new card can do. This is actually going to work out really nicely. We even drew another Holy Lion of Salvation. It's not perfect because of course we can't really take full advantage of it, but it's going to do. I mean, I would have liked to have gone Black Inscripture instead of having to trade there, but I wasn't going to pass up the chance for another 0-cost Holy Lion Crystal. Especially since next turn, Legendary Fighter could be absolutely nuts. So I would definitely rather take that opportunity. Especially with this Black Inscripture. So with the Holy Lion Crystal and an Evo, we're actually going to go take out this entire board and get a decent Legendary Fighter up. So it does force them to have to deal with this Legendary Fighter now. And I also go for the extra Holy Lion, just for extra board, make it harder for them. Unfortunately, Cagliostro is pretty much a perfect way to deal with this. Rune has a few decent options normally, but this is one of the better ones for sure. It does still cost them quite a bit of resource though, which is still in my favour, so definitely I'll take it. It's a Holy Lion Temple, and the Holy Lion Crystal will play off that, is going to work wonders. I did decide just to trade to remove it, so I didn't have to worry about that card. And anything they play from here will pretty much die immediately, so as long as they don't flood the board with followers, I shouldn't be at too big of a risk. So we're going to take out one of the two, which is perfectly acceptable. And I can pretty much just spam more Holy Lions. Because at this point, I don't really have a reason not to. As they haven't shown me anything super impressive. But this is why usually are a negative against Rune, because of course if they were any kind of big turn 9 swing deck like Giant Chimera or Mysteria, we would have been in trouble. It's just in this situation we're actually at a favourable matchup, so definitely worked out for us. So Holy Lion is definitely a fun deck, and I can definitely see it being quite powerful. Will it stick right up to tier 1? Really iffy on it, honestly. I would say it's definitely a high tier 2 at the current rate it's going to go, but you can't really predict these things so early. It's quite difficult. That's just a personal feeling that I have for this deck. But the variation I'm running is quite legendary heavy after all. I am running, what, 11 legendaries, which isn't super cheap, but you could quite easily get away with just running the 3 Holy Lion of Salvation and finding replacements for other things, whether they're gold, silver, bronze, whatever. You could quite easily fit them in. So hopefully you guys did enjoy this video. If you did, hit the like button and subscribe for more content. Check out the link in the description below for the deck list, and hopefully you had a good time. Till next time, see ya.